Welcome to this special crossover episode of Locked On Predators, Locked On Stars, Locked On Avalanche, and Locked On Winnipeg Jets. Thanks for making each of our shows your first listen of the day. We all are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am Ann Kimmel. I am a co-host at Locked On Predators. Today, I am joined by Kyle Sullivan. He is co-host of Locked On Avalanche. Joey Erickson, the host of Locked On Stars, and Harrison Lee. He is the host of Locked On Winnipeg Jets. So we got together back in September. We kind of talked about our respective teams that finished in the top of the Central Division last season. We did some predictions about what we thought we were going to see this upcoming season. We're going to revisit those predictions. We're going to talk about the highs and lows of our respective teams and talk about what we expect by the trade deadline and in the postseason. Before we dive into all of that, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, frenemies, we are back. A lot has happened since we last talked. Basically, Harrison Lee has been sitting on a throne of lies, but we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. And the Winnipeg Jets, who are absolutely on a tear this season. But before we get to what's going on with our respective teams in the Central Division, I just want to do a check-in with you all on the Four Nations face-off. What are you guys thinking about this tournament, and who do you have winning it?
I could start because I honestly, because my co-host Chris Vaselli, he was hyped for this. He despises the All-Star Game format and was excited for this international play format to take precedence over the NHL. I kind of had zero interest. I thought it was just a glorified exhibition. Why am I going to get fired up? There's really nothing on the line. And then Saturday night happened.
Oh my goodness.
And I've never been so fired up for a hockey game in all my life. It had everything. And honestly, and now you're starting to see the ratings roll in. And as a hockey fan, you see healthy numbers when it comes to the game of hockey. And that's 2 thumbs up for me. So, yes, inject this into my veins. I'm here for this Four Nations tournament.
Yeah, I think the NHL has knocked this out of the park, and I've been saying it over the last couple of days. I love that Austin Matthews cares. I love that Connor McDavid cares. This is great for the game. And unfortunately, I was not able to watch this game live since I was calling a hockey game myself, but I was living on X in between intermissions, getting the clips and seeing Brady Tkachuk and Matthew Tkachuk just throwing haymakers. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is an all-timer. And I'm so sad I don't get to watch this live, but to see the clips after and to take in the highlights, it's just exactly what the NHL needed. The All-Star Game has been a bit of a snooze fest for like the last decade. And it was just perfect to see best on best, the best sport in the world, the sport we love, and these two just juggernauts going at it. It's absolutely thrilling stuff. I was pumped for it from the beginning, and it's delivering. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, I just want to say the NHL ownership should be thrown in jail for denying us this for 10 years.
Yes.
I've been waiting for Olympic hockey to come back. And look, no NHLers at the Olympics. It's great. It adds a lot more uncertainty and there's a lot of chaos. We don't have the situation where the US and Canada and sometimes Sweden and Finland kind of sit at the top of the rankings. You have a little more upset potential. But let me tell you, when you have best on best, for one thing, I can finally exonerate Connor Hellebuck's big game reputation.
Yes.
But for the other thing, it's just you don't get that adrenaline rush like we had. And I know the context for this Four Nations probably could not have come at a more intense time for Canada, USA. So it was just a powder keg, but the energy was phenomenal. I think this is probably the most excited I was to watch a single game of hockey since the 17-18 Jets Cup run. Because that series for me was legendary against the Preds. But this game, I mean, the expectations were through the roof. And what I really was shocked by was that it delivered and somehow gave us more than we expected. So every 2 years, I am sold. Bring it back.
It's so much better than the All-Star Game. And I say this kindly, but the NHL doesn't get everything right. And that's diplomacy at its finest, as I say that. This, I feel like this is what we have been waiting for from the league in special events. I just think like it delivers. This is delivering what we wanted.
And for it to get to the point where by the first intermission, I am turned in my chair and I'm Googling a Brady Tkachuk jersey, a Matthew Tkachuk jersey,
Yeah.
because I want to buy into this. Like, it's not just because the All-Star game, when those jerseys come out, you look at them, you're like, okay, that's nice. And you go on about your life. This, you feel like an investment. Like, I must belong to this. I have to apply myself to this. And you're looking at all these jerseys and like, oh, I like his play. I like his play. And this is opening the doors for more moments that kids today could point and say, I wasn't really a hockey fan until that moment in the Four Nations tournament. And this is what's opening the door and making it a healthy league for generations down the line. And that's what I'm on board for.
I love that point. I took an Uber this morning from Amarillo, Texas to the airport. Amarillo, Texas in the Panhandle. And the Uber driver was talking about the game last night.
Wow.
That's exactly what this type of game did. It gets more of those passive fans, just sports fans in general, tuning in, and they're talking about it. And I think Harrison brings up a great point too about the tensions between Canada and US. And I'm not going to get into any politics, but I like that Canada boosts the anthem. I like that they don't like each other. There's animosity, and it just continued to build. And now we have the potential of the rematch upcoming in a few days. And that's what it's all about. I don't mind them. Let's boo. Let's like have some friendly hatred. That's okay. That's what sports is all about. And then we get to watch the boys take it out on each other when they get to face.
It was like a really throwback game. I mean, I haven't felt this kind of tension, goosebumps, energy from like international hockey probably since before I was born. I mean, there's no way that we've had a game that felt like this intense other than maybe Vancouver Olympics. But like, I wasn't that into hockey back then, and we lost. So, for me personally, it was probably not the happiest memory, but man, this feels like a little bit of lightning in the bottle, but I think it just sets up what they had like 4.4 million viewers on average for a single hockey game. That's just astounding considering like 2 million is record breaking for them. So
I love that you get to see so many of the players. We all watch a ton of hockey, but a lot of, let's say Nashville Predators fans maybe don't watch as much Connor Hellebuck as what, we watch UC Saros, so it gives you an opportunity to really see more consistently best on best. I think that has just been what's been so great. It's exposure to the absolute top in the league who maybe you don't watch on a regular basis. It's been amazing. Who do you have winning it, Harrison?
You know what? I still think Canada comes out. I think that game in Boston is going to be balls to the wall. I think Canada is going to make a couple of revisions in how they approach the game. And I think, despite a huge performance from Hellebuck, I think it's going to be one of those narrow margins. I think Canada wins in overtime.
Okay, Joey, who do you have?
I have a hard time going against the U.S. I just think they're really well constructed. I think Billy Guerin had the perfect idea of how he wanted his team to be to face the Canada that has like the elite talent that we've never quite seen before. So I'll go with the US, probably a close one too, like 2-1. I like low scoring again.
All right, Kyle.
I'm going to have to say, I mean, we're taking this back to the States now, and you're going to have that kind of like that home ice advantage. Like I got to go USA, and it's going to put me in a weird position because I'm going to have to cheer for the USA and against Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar.
Oh, I know. Doesn't that make it a little bit tricky?
It's very, very difficult.
Yeah. You know what? When we went into this tournament, I'm like, I'm calling it for Sweden just because I grew up in a Swedish community. I'm American, but very Swedish. I don't know. You know what? I am not willing to say with 100% certainty who's going to win it, but if Canada and US take the ice again in that championship game, you can bet I am going to be glued to that. And I think Canada is going to be so mad that they lost the first time. It is going to be insane. It's going to be insane. I can't wait. I can't wait to watch it. Coming up, we're going to refocus back on our respective teams. We're going to talk about preseason predictions and why the Nashville Predators' disappointment tastes like vinegar. Today's episode's brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, gentlemen. So we remember back in the day, it seems, I'm telling you, for a Nashville Predators fan, it seems like 84 years ago, that Titanic meme. Back when we knew what hope and joy felt like. And we talked about preseason predictions for our 4 teams who had finished at the top of the Central Division last season. My, how things have gone awry. All right, Harrison, let's just get right to it. We all predicted that Winnipeg was maybe going to fall out. Look at you now, friend.
Not maybe, and not maybe. They were going to fall out.
You all were
So much
supposed to
conviction.
suck.
Uno reverse. So
What's going on?
the Jets kind of went a little bit of a different direction than I thought they were. I was expecting a little more youth. They kind of opted to run it back a little more. I think that there was a thought process that the coaching staff changes, in particular on the special teams, were going to have a more pronounced impact. I think that's what they were hoping for. Davis Payne came in, and like the power play, I mean, it's just it gets you hot and bothered. It's the best power play I've seen in probably 6 or 7 years from Winnipeg. I'm used to our power play being the worst thing I've ever watched in my entire life. That was until I saw the New York Islanders power play. So sorry, Gil, but the Jets power play, it was pretty rough. And so, they opted for the veterans. They kind of stuck with it. One of the biggest things that I also never saw coming was Hellebuck repeating not only last year's Vezina performance, he's somehow doing better. That shouldn't be possible. He put up like one of the best goalie seasons I've ever seen. And somehow this year he's doing better. So, that with the rest of the league kind of not being that great this year, I think has put the Jets in pole position really to control their destiny. I think, my concerns continue to be in the postseason, and we'll chat about that a little bit later as to why, for as good as the Jets are right now, I think what sometimes goes wrong with them doesn't show up until you face a Colorado, until you face a Vegas for a 7-game series. Stuff changes very quickly.
All right, Joey, Dallas. We knew Dallas was going to come in. We knew Dallas was going to be, competing in the top of the Central Division. What's been surprising about the season, or what did you predict that you were like, nailed it?
Yeah, there's been a lot of surprises. I guess the number one surprise right now for the Dallas Stars is where they currently are at 3rd in the NHL with all the setbacks they really have had. They've had a lot of injuries and they've gone through a lot of adversity. So I am a bit shocked that the Stars currently through 55 games are still one of the top teams in the West. And I knew we came into the season thinking, okay, the Stars are going to be comfortable in the top 3, but then they lost Sagan early. They've lost Marchment for about a month. Now they've lost Miro Heiskanen, and they've lost some others to season-ending injuries. And they really have a hodgepodge of defensemen that aren't very good too, with Cody Ceci now kind of into the mix, and Matt Dumba, who hasn't really been Matt Dumba, or I should say he has been Matt Dumba. And just a real hodgepodge of different pieces all together, and they're still putting up a really impressive season. So that has really shocked me, and sort of where Harrison lies with Winnipeg. I just have a lot of questions going into the postseason. When the Stars are healthy, I feel really good about the Dallas Stars. But right now, that is a large looming question with Miro out now for like 8 to 12 weeks, and hopefully Sagan comes back before the postseason. But what is he going to look like after having another hip surgery? So a lot of questions, but I guess I've kind of nailed it that they're one of the top 3 teams in the Central. But I mean, we kind of understood that. So yeah.
Yeah, we heard you.
Sorry. I drank the Kool-Aid too, Ann. Okay. This is your fault.
Everything is my fault this season. I'm just telling you. Kyle, talk to us about Colorado. What surprises you besides the fact that you made like one of the most insane trades that I've seen in years?
I'd rather listen to Joey and Harrison talk about good things about their teams, because you want to talk about surprising. You referenced the beginning of the season. What does the state of the Central look like? What if I mentioned we traded both goalies? What if I mentioned we traded Mikko Rantanen? What if I mentioned that we had a top 5 power play to begin the season? Now they're sitting in the 20s. This has been a odd season. What if I told you the Colorado Avalanche would lose to the Chicago Blackhawks and Columbus Blue Jackets, and didn't look like they had an ounce of effort in the game? The thing that surprises me about this year's Colorado Avalanche is they don't have an identity. We talk about Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar. That's been about it. The pieces that they brought in with Martin Necas, Jack Drury, they're fitting in. And you're seeing guys step up into this role. And it's a blessing and a curse, this Four Nations tournament that we're talking about. It's great that it's going on. I just hate that it had to be now, because the Avs were finally starting to get things rolling. And like, what if I told you the Colorado Avalanche are fighting for a wild card spot? That's interesting, but that's where they are. And they can't figure things out. They spent all of January winning one, losing one, winning one, losing one. That's not Colorado Avalanche hockey, but that's where they are. And they can't maintain a theme or direction or an agenda. They just go in, expect to win, and lose. Or they go in and it's going to be an evenly matched game and they blow their opponent out. There's no rhyme or reason to it, but they got the goalie problems fixed. That's about it.
Well, I can top that. What if I told you?
I'm going to go ahead and mute.
Yeah, you just might want to. What if I told you the Predators would sign Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault and Brady Shea, and Philip Forsberg was coming off of a franchise season and it was going to be amazing in Nashville, and we cannot win a hockey game? Like, it's so funny how many times I have the moment you're talking about, Kyle, where I'm like, never would I ever have predicted that Nashville would be where they are. Now, I knew it was going to take some time, but the identity, the lack of figuring out who this team is, what this team needs to be doing anything with consistency. The only thing the Predators are consistent with is being inconsistent. It is insane to me what has happened to our 4 teams. Looking at you, Harrison. Looking at you. This season, it's just been crazy.
And we have just a couple days until the trade deadline. So the craziness, as soon as this tournament's over, it's not over. A lot of these teams will still be making moves. And everything that we're stating now about the road to this point will be completely different going into the end of the trade deadline. I know the Avalanche will be making moves. I'm pretty sure with everything Joey said about Dallas, there will be moves to be anticipated. I don't know if Winnipeg will be active. Nashville probably. Will there be active trades between the 4 of us? We got a lot more crazy stuff coming up.
Yeah. What do you anticipate at the trade deadline? Like, Harrison, what do you think? I mean, Winnipeg should basically just sit there, but do you think they're going to do, what are they looking for? What do they need?
Oh, they got to go all in. This is the year. I had that sense for a while now that it was kind of echoing 17-18. Playoff field sucks. The West is easier than it's ever been. Hellebuck is playing at a level that you can't really replicate. And the Jets are about to get completely screwed by the cap ceiling going up. So, with all a lot of Jets players sign long-term under market value deals, but I just don't think you can keep banking on that going forward. Ehlers is he might be gone after this year. Connor is, I think Connor does extend once his deal is up in about 2 seasons. But beyond that, I mean, the window is kind of very questionable. And I think Hellebuck and Scheifele, when they re-signed, were pretty much told, this is it. We are going to do all that we can to win. And I think the last few years, there have been some decent moves. I mean, Toffoli and Monahan were decent. Unfortunately, their lack of foot speed kind of became a problem against Colorado. So, yay, at least they were cheap. But now I think the impetus is to really swing for the fences. One guy I've thought, Ann, is O'Reilly from Nashville might be a target because I know, no touchy. No touchy.
That's going to be a no from me.
She already came after me, Harrison, for that one.
You will pry that contract out of my cold, dead rigor mortis hand. But go ahead.
The thing is if they do go for an O'Reilly or somebody with term, I think the Jets are willing to start spending some real assets. Brad Lambert, Colby Barlow, guys like that, I think are going to start becoming a little more available. I think Winnipeg also has an idea that the 5v5 offense isn't as good as it looks. They beat the snot out of mediocre and bad teams. They start facing really good squads, and those issues that I talked about, especially with the top line and sometimes some of the depth lines, start becoming a lot more apparent. And if there's a single injury to the blue line, like Sandberg goes down again, we're up the creek without a paddle. That is like doomsday scenario. So the Jets, I think, are doing well right now in a situation where they're not facing speed every night. But if you get to the postseason, you just, at some point, you got to get through one of those big ones in the West. And it might not be Colorado this year. The Avs have had some, serious issues depth-wise. But if they see a Vegas, I know Vegas might not look great right now, but they're always one of those teams that just has Winnipeg's number. And so you got to prepare for that. And I think the Jets, I think they have said that they're going to be aggressive. There's been a lot more chatter that they're being linked to players with serious terms. So this is one of those trade deadlines where I have no clue what's coming in. And I think we're going to be in for a very big surprise. I'm hoping it's like a Paul Stastny or a Ryan O'Reilly kind of level of player, but you never know. I know. I just had to throw that one in there for you. But I think the Jets have a lot more urgency than they have in previous years.
All right, Joey, don't say Ryan O'Reilly. What do you think, Dallas? Who are they? What are they looking for? Who do they want? Don't say Ryan O'Reilly.
I agree with Harrison that I think the West is really open. It just feels like a huge hodgepodge of different teams. And I would love Dallas to swing for the fences, as Harrison put it. I just don't know if it's in the cards this year. I would love them to go out and acquire someone like a Chris Tanev from a year ago that just adds so much stability to the back end. They need a defenseman. I just don't know if it's going to be a shiny toy, right? I don't know if it's out there. And Dallas really doesn't have the assets. They don't have a ton of draft picks. And they're also reaping the benefits of some of those young picks, like our young players like Wyatt Johnston and Liam Bichel, who has made his NHL debut this season and is coming along quite nicely as a big 6'6" defenseman. He's kind of like Victor Hedman. Really excited to see where his game goes to. But Logan Stankov and Maverick Bourque, who seem to be untouchable. GM Jim Nill is not going to just give those up for any sort of player. Seth Jones is a name that's thrown out there that I would love for the Dallas Stars to go get. He's a Texas guy. He's from Arlington. And I think if you could bring him into the Stars environment, he could be really successful. We all know he's had some issues in Chicago, but the Blackhawks are not a good team. So if you bring him into Dallas, I think he could thrive. And a player of his size and mobility is I think he has a pretty rare skill set for his size. So I think he could thrive in Dallas. The money situation doesn't really make sense. I mean, Chicago would have to eat some of that cap, and all the gymnastics would have to be played out. But if somehow Jim Nill could swing a deal like that, if it would be a GM to do it, I think it could be him. I would love that. Other than that, let's go to a more realistic option. I think somebody like Rasmus Ristolainen's been thrown out there as a big guy that can add some size on the back end. It's played some heavy minutes for Philadelphia. That's probably more of a realistic option for Dallas. So I'm thinking somebody on the back end to shore us up.
Kyle, what does Colorado do at the trade deadline? What are y'all going to do?
Well, ever since the blockbuster Mikko Rantanen trade, head coach Jared Bednar has been saying from that point to the Four Nations, we're treating this like the playoffs. That was a very loud shot to the locker room that, hey, other than Nate and Kale, you are expendable if you are not contributing to where this Avalanche team is going. You've seen some players step up. You've seen some players just kind of hover. And honestly, the Avs might have some trade needs when it comes to depth for sure on the forward, maybe like a middle to bottom six forward, maybe another center would not hurt, or a defender. But the thing is, with the up and down season of this Avalanche team, you don't know who you're trading out and where you need to fill that spot, because one night you can have an incredible output from somebody and the next 2 or 3 nights completely ghost mode. So it's very frustrating. At least you have the goalie position solved.
You're welcome.
That's wonderful. Enjoy juice. But other than that, and maybe a magical shaman to take care of Landeskog's knee. But other than that, like this is just, it's rough to figure out what this team actually needs, because night to night it could be great or it could be abysmal, and it's just hard to really patch the holes when they constantly keep popping up.
Yeah. Well, look, here's what I'm going to tell all of you all. Big sale. Big winter blowout
Yes.
over here at the Nashville Predators, except for Ryan O'Reilly. I really don't think, I mean, look, I'm sorry. It's not just me, but I feel strongly about it. But I just don't think Barry Trotz, I don't think there is anything really. Now, he'll pick up the phone, but it'll be the shortest conversation if you're calling about Ryan O'Reilly, because he is so quickly become a backbone of this team, and Lord knows the team needs something. But I'm just letting you all know, fire sale. Like, it's, if you are looking for size and kind of that grit, Michael McCarron. If you're looking for a center, maybe a Tommy Novak. We would love to see if anybody's interested in a 6-year contract with Brady Shea. That's not panned out. So just throwing some options out there, because look, Nashville's going to be selling. It's big winter blowout, friends. Big winter blowout in Nashville.
I would suggest calling the teams in the East.
Yeah. At this point, Barry Trotz is picking up the phone. It doesn't matter who's calling. That's just where we're at. Coming up, we're going to look ahead to postseason potential. Basically, I'm just going to stand here watching from the sideline forlorn while they talk about postseason potential and what these teams might expect in the offseason. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. You might be in that spot where you need the right hire like yesterday. The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That is exactly when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our shows by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. All right. Well, I didn't think this was how the old catch up with each other was going to go, but I'm just going to sit here while you all talk about the postseason, because Nashville has like a unicorn's hair chance. And that's if like all of your teams leave the NHL. Making the postseason, it was not supposed to be like this. Can I just tell you, it was not supposed to be. This was not what I signed up for, but here we are.
Me either.
So talk amongst yourselves. A postseason. What do you see happening?
I guess we'll start over here with the Avalanche. You could see back to the Natchez trade for Mikko Rantanen, you see the dynamic beginning and sparking between Nathan MacKinnon and Marty Natchez. It's speed and speed. It's Mikko and Nate were always Batman and Robin. Now you have Batman and Superman. You have two constant drivers on both, and it's starting to show up in the power play, which has been abysmal. for most of the season, it's starting to go the other way. It's starting to improve. You're starting to see more action. So you're starting to see the top 6 of forwards start to find their footing, which is a good thing. And you feel very confident in Mackenzie Blackwood. He has been stellar this year. It helps to have that defense in front of him, but the marriage of the two has been wonderful this year. You feel good about the Avalanche going forward. You know you're not going to get a high seed because, you, like I said, you're fighting with Calgary right now for wild card spots. You feel good, but it also determines on what happens at the trade deadline for the Avalanche, what they decide to address, and again, how this team decides to play up until that point. Because at this juncture, they're going to be playing for their life to get in, and that's not a position they have been used to in maybe the last 4 or 5 years. But we got to see this team get hungry and find an identity in that period first.
All right, Joey, what do you see happening with Dallas in the postseason?
Yeah, I think the Stars are in a mode right now where they haven't necessarily cared about the regular season as much, or has put a lot of emphasis into it. And what I mean by that is they're just finding ways to sort of win hockey games here in January and February, and I think they're beginning to peak, or at least to start to get that incline right into the postseason. As you put with the Avalanche, the power play was really bad for the Stars in the first, really 3-4 months of the season. It's starting to take a turn for the better, and a large part of that is Jason Robertson. He got off to such a slow start. So did Wyatt Johnston. There's a lot of different elite scorers for Dallas that got off to really slow starts. One of those hasn't been Matt Duchene, however. Matt Duchene has been a huge surprise. I probably should have brought this up.
Great. Yes, you should have.
He leads the Dallas Stars in points, and there's some nights he looks like he's 25 again. He is just flying around looking like he was a high draft pick out of Colorado back in the day, and he's making things happen. And I think also what gives me a lot of hope here is Jake Ottinger is quietly having a very, very good season, really consistent. And I think that's even more important. We know he's had some incredible playoff series and he's put together some decent seasons, but this has been the most consistent Jake Ottinger we've seen. And that will pay dividends down the line for Dallas. So I think if the Cards all go the right way, and hopefully they don't have to play 3 Western Conference Finals opponents like they had to do last year with Vegas, Colorado, and Edmonton, if they can get the right path, I think they can make something happen. I do think the conference final is a realistic option, and I think it should be for the Stars. Their window's open, and they got to go try to get it.
All right, Harrison, you got Connor Hellebuyck. Basically, you could put me and my mom out in front of Connor Hellebuyck, and I think he could probably win a 7-game series. But before we started recording, you were kind of about postseason in Winnipeg. Cry us your river.
It's lonely at the top.
I know. I feel like it's you're throwing stones down at everyone else, and everyone's like, "Why are you complaining?" And I get a lot of pushback from Jets fans. They're like, "They're number 1 in the league. They've got the best team. They're kicking butt. Why are you always complaining? Why are you always criticizing?" And I'm like, "I'm not. I'm just pointing out the Jets have done this before. Now, in previous years, they've collapsed around January. Hasn't happened this year. So the big problem for them, and what I continue to have some reservations about, is they're being powered by an elite power play, an elite goalie, and an okay 5v5 game. There are some lines that are fantastic at even strength. It's your bottom 6 guys. It's not the dudes who are supposed to get you goals and create your offense on a consistent basis. The second line with Ehlers, Perfetti, and Nemesnikov has started to put it together a little bit more consistently. For a while, Ehlers and Perfetti were just not on the same page. That's kind of changed a bit. Nemesnikov looks fine. I think the Jets probably still want a little bit more juice down the middle there. Lowry is currently out. When he comes back, I do wonder if Arniel goes back to Lowry and Ehlers. That was a pairing that looked really good before Lowry kind of imploded and went on IR. So that could be a thing that they try. My big question with the Jets really comes down to the top line. The top line the past couple of years has been all over the place. Kyle Connor is having the best season of his career, And it's because he decided to back check more than once a game. And like, I know it sounds very funny, and it is, it's pretty ridiculous, but like he always cheated for offense. And so that line spent like hours and hours in the defensive zone, and they got outscored on a consistent basis. Now that he's kind of doing a little more of the transition work, and forcing turnovers and stuff, it's been a really different experience. It's just there's something about him, and I can't quite explain it, but like they're sometimes less than the parts. The sum doesn't always add up to what you want it to. And it shows up really against elite teams. Like the Caps, they were fine-ish. Against some other teams, they've been okay. Against Vegas, you really didn't notice them. Colorado, they were okay, kind of 50-50. And like when you get to the playoffs, 50-50 just don't cut it. We saw Colorado rip through us last year. I don't know that that's going to happen that way this year. But again, I think it kind of depends on what happens with the deadline and how the Jets sort of reorient their top nine. Because like the top line, they're never touching that. That trio has played more than any other trio of forwards in the whole league. So they don't experiment much, and I sometimes wonder if that's going to eventually bite them in the butt. But, I mean, as long as Hellebuyck can generally do enough to keep them competitive, and Neil Pionk doesn't throw the puck in front of his own goal like he does occasionally, which it's questionable, I think they can go deep. I think I've been traumatized a lot by Winnipeg playoffs the last few years, and at this point, I'm kind of in Joey's boat where, like, you talk about the regular season, and I'm like, great, win a President's Trophy. That's fine. Get yourself a fancy little banner. That's cool. When it comes to the playoffs, does that invalidate all the work you just did? Because you spent 82 games looking like an elite team. Can you actually do it in the playoffs? And that continues to be one of my last questions. I think they're like 75 or 80% of the way there, maybe 15 to 20% left for them to figure out.
Yeah, I'm curious, Harrison, if you would subscribe to this fact too. As a Stars fan, of course, Dallas is one of the better teams. But I'm curious if you subscribe to the fact that, do you feel like Winnipeg lacks that superstar? Because we have that feeling as Stars fans sometimes when you go up against the Edmontons of the world or the Colorados, like we don't have the McKinnon, we don't have the McDavid that can just flip a series on its head. And sometimes it's hard to win series when you don't have that guy you can go to. And the Stars have they have a wealth of talent, but sometimes you just need that guy, and they don't have that. And I think that worries Stars fans.
Well, I will add on both of those points. The last two Stanley Cup winners won because of depth. It's been a while since the Avalanche have won with Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar and that superstar mentality. Vegas won because they were deep, and they just constantly had the pressure. And so did Florida. And as speaking from the Avalanche point of view, looking at Dallas and Winnipeg, that's how we have to view them as well. It's not just enough to roll out Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar and expect to win the game. You know it's never going to stop, and you have to survive. And that does give you a benefit when it comes to the playoffs.
For the Jets, they do have a superstar on that level. He just doesn't score goals, and so that's kind of the challenge. You've got a guy who can stop just about everything other than like a meteor, and maybe the meteor gets stopped too. I don't know.
He could do it.
Depending on the size, we might be talking a couple of cities worth. He might be able to pull off a Superman. But I guess the question for Winnipeg is they do have their approaches to win by committee. When you look at the Panthers, right, their elite players are still above what the Jets have. Tkachuk, Barkov, Reinhart, those guys are they're just demons. Winnipeg's got guys who can be demon-like. They just always have some moments where they're not 100% switched on, or they're maybe a tier just below. And so it really is incumbent upon everyone else to kind of carry that slack. I mean, Josh Morrissey is a franchise defender. You've got Sandberg, who's elite now and has really become a backbone of this team. You've got Hellebuyck, who can basically cover the surface of the planet. And then you've got pretty good forwards. If they go out and get, say, a Nelson, a McCann, I still hold a flame for Giroux. There's a few guys out there that I think are being linked and talked about. There's a chance I've heard, Kyrou and Thomas might be available. There's a Parayko rumor, which I don't really want to do that, but more power to the Jets if they decide that's what they need. There are many ways for them to kind of dress up this pig, but I just don't know if any of them are going to be enough to move the needle when you get into that 7-game series, all the eyes and pressure are on you. Will this team collapse? I'm a Ravens fan, so I'm used to playoff collapses. I've watched, and that's the thing, is like, I've watched all my favorite teams are really good in the regular season, and then they get under the bright lights, and it's a different experience. I have more confidence in this year's Jets team. I think that there's something a little more resilient there. I'm still not 100%, but I'm very close.
Look, if you are looking for a change of pace, Harrison, why don't you come in and become a Nashville Predators fan? Because clearly we suck in the regular season, and you won't even have to worry about what happens in the postseason.
I'm an Orioles fan. I did that. I paid my dues.
You've done your time. You've done your time. Fair enough. Fair enough. Oh, gosh. We're going to have to wait and see what happens with, 3 of these 4 teams. You go, guys. When it comes to the postseason. And of course, who knows what's going to happen at the trade deadline. I think it's going to be really interesting to see, especially if, any of our teams end up swapping some personnel. We'll have to revisit and see what our thoughts are. Before we sign off on this Central Division crossover that has just done nothing but make me feel even worse about my life choices, will you guys share where everybody can find your podcast? Kyle, where can we find Locked On Avs?
You can find Locked On Avalanche. You can just search us. We're on YouTube, and any socials you use, you can find us there. Just search Locked On Avalanche.
All right, Joey, where can they find Locked On Stars and that really great player, Matt Duchene?
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. Can you believe a team would pay him not to play for them? I mean, that is crazy, crazy stuff. But you can find Locked On Stars on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. You can follow us on the X Machine too, at Locked On Stars for all your daily Stars content.
All right, Harrison, where can everybody find you and your podcast to post the "You Sit on a Throne of Lies" meme?
Wow. Okay. I feel very called out. I'm on all the same platforms as all of our wonderful colleagues, YouTube, all your favorite platforms. Just know it's Locked On Winnipeg Jets, because if you search up Locked On Jets, you might hear about how bad Aaron Rodgers is instead. That is a thing.
Tough.
Yeah. So we're Locked On Winnipeg Jets. We post every day, and we'll be happy to see you. And you can call me a liar all you want. I will not believe you.
He's too busy covering a winning team. He just can't hear you right now. You can find Locked On Predators too, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. We're on social media at LO_Predators as well. Gentlemen, under the circumstances, this has been amazing. It's always great to chat with you. Predators fans will have to pick their favorite here to follow in the postseason, because it's just not looking great here. But thank you for your time, and let's catch up in the postseason and see what's happening next year.
Hope to be there.
You and me both.